The Mycenaeans. Okay, we're going to look at them, but what we are really looking at is the fall of the Bronze Age. The Mycenaeans, similar to the Minoans, were a civilization that were on or in Europe. They flourished for about, it says here, about 600 years or so before they went into a decline. Actually, they came to a stop. And so we're going to look at that. Okay, first off, we have a little question for you. The Bronze Age saw a flourishing of great civilizations filled with trade, writing, distinct religions. Okay, their culture was amazing. Okay, what Bronze Age civilizations have we already studied? Think about that for a second. Now, we are not going to count China and Japan and India as the Bronze Age civilization. Those are separate. Those are in the Far East and Central Asia. But when we look at Mesopotamia, those were Bronze Age. The Egyptians were Bronze Age. Now, the more recent ones we looked at, the Babylonians and the Persians, those are after the Bronze Age. So we're looking at civilizations before about 1100 BCE, which would make the Egyptians for sure. Now, the main thing you got to look at is that the Bronze Age was a connected world. It flourished. They had trade networks. These countries were in contact with each other. Yes, they fought with each other, but they were in contact. And we had the Mycenaeans, the Minoans. Last we looked at the Hittites. We talked about the Hittites a little bit. They came down and ruled Egypt for a little bit. They were from Anatolia, up in what is now modern-day Turkey. The Egyptians. Okay, now the Egyptians, Bronze Age. We left the Egyptians with Ramses the Great. And so just after Ramses the Great is when they came into a fall. Now, the Egyptian culture maintains for a bit, but it does change about 1100 BCE. You don't have the major dynasties anymore. The Babylonians, okay, they fall. So Hammurabi's Babylon, it falls, but it's reborn again under what Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar when they overthrow the Assyrians. The Assyrians, okay, when we looked at the Assyrians, there was a previous Assyrian Empire. And so when we looked at the Assyrians, we're looking at the Neo-Assyrians. And they were after the Bronze Age. So you do have another culture that grows up after the Bronze Age collapse. Okay, the Canaanites. Those are the people that the Israelites came and tried to conquer and push back out of Palestine when they re-entered Palestine. And you also have the Cypriots. Now, the Cypriots we don't have the island on here, but it's just east of Knossos. There's a big island called Cyprus, and they live there. Now, this picture here is of the Lion's Gate, right up there on the Peloponnesus. Peloponnesus is the Greek word for peninsula. Right here is the Sea of Mycenae. And this is what they named the Mycenaean world after. Okay. Now the Mycenaean, here is a picture of a shipwreck, the Uluburun shipwreck. Okay, now this shipwreck was about 3,000 BC, or about 3,000 years ago, or I think it was 1300 BCE. I got to double check the dates. But in this shipwreck, they found copper from Cyprus. Okay, that island I just told you about. They found tin from the Taurus Mountains in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is in Central Asia, just above India and Pakistan. 1,500 jars of terebinth resin from Canaan. Now, terebinth resin is turpentine. That's what they'll make turpentine out of. They found Cypriot jars with olive oil and pomegranates. So these jars were made in Cyprus, but they contained olive oil and pomegranates from other regions of the Mediterranean. They found colored glass that they'd use for jewelry. So they think that they had glass discs that they'd cut out little beads out of for cheap jewelry, costume jewelry. They found elephant tusks. Elephant tusks come from either India or Africa. And so that shows more of that trade network. Hippopotamus teeth. Jewelry, probably from the people that lived on the boat, the crew members, the people that were traveling on the boat. They found amber from the Baltic. The Baltic is way up north. Go all the way through Europe. It is between Sweden and what is now Russia or Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Those are the Baltic states. And so they got amber from that region. So I'm this is all to show you how broad this trade network was 3,000 years ago. So you had people coming from the Baltic trading material down. You had people coming from India trading stuff over. You had people coming from Africa trading stuff up. You had the Italian sword. You had Mycenaean double axes. So the people that were on this boat, there were quite a few people. Lots of cultures represented. And so this is a very modern network of societies. That's what the Bronze Age was. They were not isolated. They were connected in many ways. Now, this ship, these bases down here are called amphora, and they have a sloped or a cone bottom because when they stack them on a boat, okay, the hull of the boat is round, and so you want these to have a pointed bottom so they don't roll around as much. Interesting, isn't it? Back here, these are copper ingots. Now, the copper ingots from Cyprus and the tin would be used to make the bronze material that they used, and that's what was the main metal at this time frame. Okay, after the Bronze Age, you have more iron used. Now, the other things, just it's amazing to look at the variety of things that were on this ship and where they came from. Also, let's see, the Mycenaean double axes probably were with a couple of passengers. This ship was about 45 to 50 feet long, about 17 feet wide, and they could have been paying passengers to be taken back to Greece or the Peloponnesus. So it's fascinating to look at these things here. Now, one person we always associate with Greece is Agamemnon. Okay, he was the king of Mycenae. Agamemnon, in legend, it says that he was given the scepter to rule Mycenae by Zeus himself. Now, he is also the leader of the Greeks in the Trojan War. If you remember your Greek mythology, we haven't looked at it yet in here, but there's a big feast given in Mycenae, and the gods and goddesses have a bet about who the prettiest woman in the world is. I forget who selects her, but somebody says Helen of Troy Helen is the prettiest woman in the world. And at that time, people had come down from Troy, and so the Trojans, Paris and his brother, take Helen away and take her back to Troy. And that's the start of the Greek War or the Trojan War. So one thing, or a couple things we need to look at here, okay? Mycenae was a civilization based on these walled fortresses led by these warrior kings like Agamemnon. Okay, they're going to be fairly selfish. These things, the societies are set up to benefit the king and the royal or elite class. Now, once this all falls, these large stone fortresses, they're called Cyclopean walls because later on the Greeks would look at these walls and say, who built this place? And they'd say the Cyclops. And so they tell these stories about how these things were made. Now, this Mask of Agamemnon probably predates the Trojan War by about 400 years. And so that just shows you the length of time that this Mycenaean culture was flourishing. Okay, let's see. Now, part two. The Bronze Age came to an end over the period of several hundred years. Okay, what could have led to the collapse of so many Bronze Age civilizations? Now, we looked at Mycenaean. We talked about the Minoans, and they collapsed before the Bronze Age collapsed. But the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Canaanites, Babylonians, the Assyrians, all these cultures come to an end. There's others too that weren't mentioned. I think the Mitanni, there's some others that are out there that ended. And so it's not just one government that falls, it's a bunch. They all come down together. So what could have led to those collapses? Think about it for a second. Okay, now we're going back to the mythology. Bronze Age collapse and the Trojan War. Okay, the primary causes for the Bronze Age collapse are natural catastrophes. Now, not any one of these would lead to that collapse, but it's all these things taken in total. So you got earthquakes. When you look at that Mesopotamian region, not Mesopotamia, but the Mediterranean region, they do find evidence of a lot of earthquakes between about 1225 and 1175 BCE, right in the heart or the end of that Bronze Age collapse. There's also evidence of severe droughts and climate change. If food sources become scarce, okay, people are going to start looking around for food. And so from about 1300 to 1100 BCE, you have climate change. And it's fascinating because you have rulers from this time that are in contact with each other. Okay, and they are contacting each other saying, hey, we're in a famine. We need food. Can you help us out? But at this time, the whole region's in a famine. And so it's not just one area that's going down. And there's lots of letters that they found like this, and it's kind of hard to date, but we can see that they were writing to each other saying we're in a famine, internal rebellions or class wars. Okay, if you have Agamemnon in this big city and their palace set up in this fort, and the rulers are selfish and they are ruling just for themselves, eventually, especially when food becomes scarce, people will start to rebel, and they'll start to try and find a new way to get to feed their families, to take care of themselves. And so you have these internal structures that are starting to fall apart. Invasions. Once one city falls, okay, and that country starts to fall apart, you have people that are going to take off and try to find other places to live. And so you have an internal rebellion, but then you get other people that might be coming in to try and take over your city and civilization to get what you have, because they may not have it. Okay, this could be the Trojan War. In fact, the Mycenaeans were very warlike, and they did fight with each other. And if you remember the Trojan War, you have Odysseus. He's one of the soldiers. They come up and they battle with Troy. Agamemnon's in there. Odysseus comes up with a plan. They siege the city of Troy for 10 years. In the 10th year, they say, you know what? We're going home. Odysseus comes up with this plan to build a Trojan horse and hide a bunch of soldiers inside the horse and pull it up to the gates of Troy. And then all the other Greek soldiers leave. Okay. The Trojans open the city gates, bring the horse in at night. The soldiers drop out and take over the city. That is the rough thumbnail sketch of what happened. But they burn the city down. People flee the city because they are under attack. That city is not going to protect them anymore. Where do Trojans go? There's some theory, and we talked about this before, that they went down to Canaan, where they were the Philistines or other people that fought against the Jewish people. Some of these, and when we look at Rome is founded by refugees from Troy. And we'll look at that when we get to the Roman Empire. Okay, now, so we have these fights, internal disruptions, we have invasions of sea people or refugees from Troy, and this takes that trade, okay, that shipwreck we saw, that kills that trade network. Okay, if people are no longer mining copper in Cyprus, if people aren't getting tin from Afghanistan, if these things are not coming together because all we're focused on is feeding on ourselves, okay, that trade network is going to collapse. And so all these things together led to all of these civilizations collapsing almost at once. Okay, what are the results of the Bronze Age collapse? What could some of the effects of the collapse be? Okay, think about it. What could happen? Okay, a lot of the cities were destroyed. We talked about that. Populations sought new regions that could support their lives and livelihood. This is fascinating, but the writing systems they had before were lost. We talked about linear A. We talked about the hieroglyphs, the Cretan hieroglyphs. We talked about linear B. These things were lost. Now, part of linear B has been deciphered, but it is not, totally, we get some information from it, not a lot. Now, socially and politically, you get this upheaval of people. People that were the elite are now gone, and you have lower class people or people who are poor. They're trying to become more self-sufficient. And so socially and politically, you have a regression. Okay, things are going to be simpler. There's not going to be school. There aren't going to be these priests. You're not going to have the glass jewelry that comes from across the Mediterranean. You won't have these things that come from across the world. So anything you have, you're going to make yourself. Okay. You'll become much more self-sufficient. You're not going to eat those pomegranates or the olive oil. I didn't list this, but there's lots of spices on the ship too. All these things are gone because people are going to focus on their own personal needs. They're not going to focus on producing something else for someone else to sell because the trade networks are gone. There's no one to sell to. This is called the Dark Age. Okay. Now, the Dark Age, when you collapse in like this, the people that live in this Dark Age, they are going to start creating new myths. They're going to look at the Cyclopean wall and say, who built these walls? They'll look at the legends of Troy and say, you know what, there was this big war and these are the people that fought in it. And they'll make stories up because it's not written. And they'll tell these stories to each other, and these stories will grow, become more fantastical, more romantic. They'll become more mysterious. And so from this Bronze Age collapse, we get lots of Greek myths. Now, the fall of civilizations left this power vacuum. And that power vacuum is there's no one there to control you. And so we are going to get new governments that form. Okay, when we get to Greece, we'll see Athens, and Athens is going to become a democracy. We'll see not Persia, but we'll see Sparta, and how they develop into a two kings, and I can't remember the word that describes two kings. But we'll have these different cultures or different civilizations grow up. We'll see Rome, and Rome develops into a republic. We'll also see new writing systems, which might be good for us because the letters here that we have are different from the words or letters they used in the Bronze Age. Okay, if the Bronze Age existed or continued, it did not fall, we might have more of a Chinese style script where all of our letters could represent ideas, not just sounds. Now, the Bronze Age collapse also led to the flourishing of other religions like Judaism. Okay, these people were able to thrive under this collapse because they were allowed to develop their own little kingdom and become somewhat self-sufficient and teach their beliefs. Okay. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you. Send me an email and we can talk. Take care.